In research, I went back and watched all 4 games, and just briefly touch on the lead into that season, lead into the playoffs, and we'll start with Minerva. And tell me a little bit about what you thought going into that game, because I watched the game and I got some things I want to ask you.
Well, it actually starts before Minerva. It starts at Hubbard, the last game of the season. But before I even get into that, let me do a couple shout outs to number one, the class of 2026 Chaney Athletic Hall of Fame is on the horizon. And the class is almost complete, and we'll be getting more information out about that. The plan is to have it at a football game next season.
Okay.
And want to give a shout out to Westside Football, Paul Lamangi. Another great year. Paul wasn't able to coach in the state championship game, but just doing a remarkable job out in Nebraska with his football team and being a state contender every year. And, of course, a shout-out to you on your induction into the Ursuline Hall of Fame.
Thank you.
Well-deserved. And
I appreciate you making an appearance, which I know was you're supporting your friend.
It was a pleasure to do it. Okay, with that not out of the way, but taken care of, the run to the state championship game really began at Hubbard. We went into Hubbard on Halloween thinking that we were collecting gear the next day.
And that's week 10.
That's week 10, yes. We knew that the only way that we would even have a possibility of sneaking in to the playoffs was to upset Hubbard, who was undefeated at the time, at their place. And our kids went and just played lights out. And I think we ended up winning 28-7 or 28-6. And we got in. And that took us to Salem the next week in some real serious weather. Had rain and snow. It was cold and was miserable. And our kids went out and just really played phenomenally. We just happened to peak. I think we peaked at Hubbard, and we had a couple of losses during the year, and kids came together and put together a great effort against Minerva.
So Minerva plays in the NBC, right? At that point in time was a really good conference.
They were ranked number 1 in the state.
They were the AP state champs, right? Undefeated, 10-0. Mm-hmm. So back-to-back weeks, week 10, week 11, you get, at the time, right, 9-0 and then 10-0, undefeated teams. And tell me a little bit about going into the game plan, watching film on Minerva, what you saw, and how you thought you could beat them.
We knew we had to stop them, and defensively, our kids did a great job. And we felt that we had to throw the football, even though, the weather, we certainly didn't anticipate the weather. So coming in, we were, throwing the football was definitely a priority for us to be able to do. And fortunately, and I've said this a number of times, Antoine threw the ball like it wasn't rainy and snowy, like it was sunny and 80.
So I went and watched that game yesterday, and all the games we're going to talk about. And on film, the old VHS, you really can't see how bad the weather was. But I remember you saying that.
Yeah.
And just watching the play of the game, you really don't, especially him throwing the ball. There are some fumbled snaps on both sides, right? Exchanges. But that was their third best offensive team in school history, Minerva. 10-0, beat Louisville, who was a perennial power, not only in that league, but in the playoff contention, who you guys had played earlier. They take the opening kickoff and they score.
Yeah.
They just kind of run at, they're running dive or double dive, really power offense. They did have a quarterback who could throw the ball, and they seem to have more success throwing the ball than running the ball after the first series. What was kind of your thoughts of the flow of the game?
Yeah, we were very, very concerned how how readily they came down the field and scored, and when we saw that as per game plan that we'd have success mixing it up. Again, the throwing element was key to making the offense go.
Yeah. So they go down, make it 7-0. Ollie Hightower pops a maybe power right off tackle, 34, whatever the case may be, for 20, 30-yard run. Now it's 7-6 and miss the extra point. Minerva gets a ball back. Long possession, 13 plays, and they kick a field goal to make it 10-6, right? What do you remember about going in before half?
Getting with Pope and saying, what do we need to slow down this Minerva attack, and because we felt good about our ability to move the football, and then I think Pope made a few adjustments and we tweaked a few things, and we kind of took control defensively and offensively.
Yeah, I think after those first couple series, they really didn't do much after that.
No.
They kind of moved the ball between the 30s. Really didn't do much. You score before half, you go up 12-10 at half.
Yeah, I remember being very concerned about how they managed their first drive. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
And that being concern of being able to come back to that and that type of success, and that's what stands out in my mind. And being okay, they had a couple down series, but they showed the ability to move the ball on us, and that was a concern. And I think our kids stepped up and shut their attack down.
It's I did notice a couple things. So let me ask you this: there was a, I don't know if it was tight tough, right, or just tight, but you have double tight ends, and you start motioning Anthony down. Right, tough motion.
Mm-hmm.
The first play, you kind of run a little leak or a corner. You hit it, and I think this is in the second half. The next time, it looks like you're running an option. And I don't know if Antoine just created, but he ends up throwing the ball to Anthony. You got a tailback and pitch phase. It didn't look like a design play action, Was that? Do you remember anything like that?
I don't. I mean, we're talking 30 years.
No. If somebody would have went off script, I bet you'd have remembered that.
Yeah, I'm sure, but don't get me wrong. It wasn't unlike like Antoine and Anthony backyarding.
Yeah.
They did that.
It kind of looked
from
like
time
a
to
read.
time.
To be honest with you, it almost looked like a triple option.
We had speed back off throw, speed option where he pulls back.
It didn't quite look like that, but there's a 3-play series where that happens, and it looks like your running back's in pitch phase, so he could run it, he could pitch it, or he could, create and have, nowadays everybody's doing that.
Yeah.
But you had the ability to throw it.
Right.
But was that something you had designed?
No, I'd say I'd go out on a limb and say no.
Okay.
I would say that was something that probably occurred as a result of something that they did defensively on that play, and Antoine and Anthony created.
Took it, yeah. So you come out after the second half, and Minerva fumbles on the second play. Right, they get the ball, they fumble on the second play. What are you thinking at that point in time? 12-10, right? Tight game, nip tuck.
Yeah, again, I'd have to go back and look at the film, and I haven't looked at it, and but I know, sitting here, that the thought was, we got to jump on this turnover and make something happen out of as a result. So if you're telling me the next series that we hit a home run, I wouldn't be surprised, because again, I was worried about their ability to bounce back, and that I gave them all the respect in the world. They were the number one team in the state. Yeah,
5 plays after that, Antoine hits Anthony for a 6-yard touchdown. So you're up 19-10. Floyd carries 13 times for 113 yards. And then you were quoted in the Vindicator as saying, I think a lot of it is speed, and I think a lot of it is respect for the speed.
Yeah. Anthony was a tailback.
Well, this was something I was going to talk about later. And it gets even more as the playoff run becomes deeper. You have Hightower at tailback. You have Cochran at tailback. I think Lynn gets a carry. Floyd's getting carries. You're moving guys all over the place.
Yeah, and the ability to do that, the ability to have those type of kids, Anthony was, Anthony could have been a great, settled in as a great tailback, but because as a wing, and being able to bring them and dot the I with them at times, just made him multi-dimensional as a weapon. And again, as I mentioned to you today on the phone, that Troy and Cochran and Hightower, their multi-dimensional status was something that really helped us. I mean, they played on both sides of the ball, and we could put them wide. We could, we can dot the I with them, and it gave us a lot of weapons.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about who ran tight end, who ran fullback, who ran tailback, and where they played. It's all the same names, but it's just moving them around.
Yeah.
Very, very, very impressive. And I think just watching the film, right, you had, and I could be wrong, but it seems like you had three guys consistently making plays, right? You had Antoine, you had Anthony, and you had Ollie Hightower. And then in different situations and in different games, you had other guys that had great games.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe not every game, but those, you had your features, and then you had guys that, like Lotto in a couple other games, always making catches. Dan Lynn. You had all these guys that were contributing offensively and defensively as well, right?
Yeah.
You know, you got Teuton Smith at fullback, right? And it's just a rotation of guys.
And the most impressive thing, I think, and this is hats off to our kids, not only did they have the flexibility to play multiple positions, but they had to know multiple formations, multiple motions. You know, we were doing a lot of look at the right hand and we're going to hit you with the left. And again, that's a tribute to being able with the timing and offensively. Our kids had to absorb a lot of information, and it enabled us to be, as I said, multidimensional.
So last question on this game. I also want to say Bugsvich, 13 tackles, 8 solos, and a sack. You know, and you'll see him be spoken about as we go through the run. You know, like just a guy making plays, and obviously has a great game, even a state championship game against a guy who ends up playing in the NFL, in Grant Bowman, right? So what is your thought beating Hubbard, beating Minerva, AP state champs, and I know that that's mythical, so to speak. But are you thinking, hey, we got to get ready for next week and East? You know, is there a time where something starts to creep into your head and say, well, we might have a shot at this?
At winning them all?
Yeah.
Well, no, I think the first and foremost on all of our minds was making amends for, you know, the disappointment at East in the regular season. And that was what was in front of us, and that was what was most on all of our minds, to the point where I think we went in really tight.
Yeah.